Yeah, I'm pretty far in. Right now I'm at the part where that guy's like, "Oi, Brandon, can you do me a favor?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll do anything for a stranger." And he's like, "Oh, my shoe's broke." And he's like, "All right, let's see if I can patch these up." You remember a few weeks ago when Microsoft hit a road bump in its acquisition of Activision Blizzard? And I said, this is like they're down 3-0 in a playoff series. Well, they've basically tied it up. It's 3-3 right now, and they've got a lot of momentum coming into Game 7. Over the last 2 weeks, there's been hearings between the U.S.'s Federal Trade Commission and Microsoft about this Activision acquisition. And look at me. Honestly, I don't like to talk about this stuff. It's not my wheelhouse, man. I've never said the words preliminary injunction in my life until this moment. How'd I do? So here's where it currently stands, as simply as I understand it. The hearing for this preliminary injunction that the FTC was asking for is over, and now the judge will take 2 weeks maximum to make a decision. If in 2 weeks the FTC is granted the preliminary injunction by the federal judge, the deal is effectively dead. It is just a preliminary injunction, I guess, but Bobby Kotick said this week, yeah, if they don't get this thing done by July 18th, it's not happening. If you go ahead and make this preliminary injunction happen, we're done. We'll give Microsoft one last hug, and then we will continue on our paths as separate companies. If the preliminary injunction is not granted, Microsoft is likely to go ahead and purchase Activision Blizzard over the CMA, meaning we don't care what you say. Meaning we're just, you know what? We changed our minds. We're going to do this anyway. And nobody knows what is going to happen, but those are the two things that can happen. And apparently we'll find out what happens in a matter of weeks. Finally. Isn't it exciting? But from this week's FTC hearings, there were a lot of headlines. A lot of video games business that we're normally not privy to became highly public. PlayStation games cost as much as movie blockbusters to make, exposed budget show? Oh, okay. Xbox's Phil Spencer seemingly decided to make all ZeniMax games exclusive in 2021 meeting? Yeah, I believe that. Microsoft CEO would get rid of console exclusives if he could. And yes, that's hilarious. But for you tonight, I wanted to pick what I believe to be the most humorous headline sprouted from this trial. Microsoft's proposed strategy to spend Sony out of business revealed in 2019 internal email. So this email comes from Matt Booty, who is simultaneously head of Microsoft Studios and head of Xbox Game Studios. He's head of the studios. It's a spicy email. Unfortunately, the context, the things that came before it and after it apparently are redacted out. But I guess the context is this was all written because somebody proposed no longer allowing games day one on Game Pass. So this is from Matt Booty to Tim Stewart. Thanks for sharing. A lot to digest here. We'll read in detail, but I'm going to respond right now. A different view to the general view below might be that we, Microsoft, are in a very unique position to be able to go spend Sony out of business. Hell yeah. If we think that video game content matters in 10 years, we might look back and say, totally would have been worth it to lose $2 or $3 billion in 2020 to avoid a situation where Tencent, Google, Amazon, or even Sony have become the Disney of games and own most of the valuable content. We'll obviously talk about this more, but I think even as recent as 2019, there was like this corporate jealousy and maybe fear over Disney owning Star Wars and Marvel and, Frozen and Winnie the Pooh. I think like just like if you work in a corporation, you're jealous of that. That makes you furious. For example, it is practically impossible for anyone to start a new video streaming service at scale at this point. This is 2019, HBO Max not out yet. What content do you base it on? Things like Hulu and CBS All Access will be trivial players in this space. Now, this kind of turned out to be true. CBS All Access became part of Paramount Plus. Hulu is going to become part of Disney Plus this year. In games, Google is 3 to 4 years away from being able to have a studio up and running. Yeah. Amazon has shown no ability to execute on game content. It's fair. Content is the one moat that we have in terms of a catalog that runs on current devices and capability to create new. Sony is really the only other player who could compete with Game Pass, and we have a 2-year and 10 million sub lead. If we reverse course on day and date, it's gonna be hard to convince folks that things like Mixer or xCloud have much of a chance of surviving scrutiny either. Now this is December 2019. It's June 2020 when Mixer is closed. So it did not survive scrutiny. Now, first and foremost, let's keep things official. To The Verge, Microsoft did issue a statement through its public affairs team. This email is 3.5 years old and predates the announcement of our acquisition by 25 months. It refers to industry trends we never pursued and is unrelated to the acquisition. So, we could have spent Sony out of business, but we decided not to. Fine, we believe you. It's okay. What I find funny about this email is how frankly we're talking about video games as IP. The value of content. The moat around Castle Microsoft. I love the idea that he believes in 2019, Marvel's out there. For $2 or $3 billion, you could have something that grows into Marvel in 10 years. It's out there somewhere. Let's just buy it now. But I wonder if you're thinking the same thing when you hear that email. Here we see somebody who is scared of Amazon or Tencent or Google or even Sony becoming the Disney of games. When I kind of feel like we already got the Disney of games. Right? When this goofy face is making the most money at the box office than any other established film franchise, who do you think it is? When this goofy face is sprouting up in Universal Studios across the globe, who do you think is the Disney of gaming? And here's the thing, you might say, well, actually that email is just about Game Pass in particular. Right? It's like they're not competing with Nintendo on Game Pass, but Nintendo is competing with Game Pass. It's called Nintendo Switch Online and Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack. And yeah, those are heavily reliant on Nintendo's first-party back catalog, but hey, just this week, they added the Genesis classics, Ghouls and Ghosts, The Revenge of Shinobi, Landstalker, and Crusader of Senti. Yeah, it's not Starfield Day 1 on Game Pass, but it's a gaming subscription. Still, Nintendo, irrelevant. You looking at these pie charts? Nintendo, irrelevant. Not part of this discussion. I can't tell if it's a thing where it's like Nintendo is too small. Bobby Kotick's like, you know what? I didn't think to even put Call of Duty on the Switch. I regret that now, but at the time it just didn't seem right. So I can't tell if it's that or if it is just like Nintendo is just too special. Right? They are too Disney-like. That it would take us 30 years to come up with a Mario. It would take us 30 acquisitions to have something as strong as Animal Crossing. I don't know which it is. But yeah, even if that email does completely ignore the existence of Nintendo, the closest thing gaming has to a Disney, I agree with the central point that it is all about IP. That if you're trying to get people to your platform, it can't just be about value. It can't just be about superior technical performance. You got to have content. You got to have IP. You got to have faces. It's stupid, but it's true. And Activision Blizzard King is good content. It's valuable content, we should say. Because you can't get people to spend $300 to go to this stupid thing without these stupid characters / worlds. But truly, I think like just those visuals, that visual element is so important in getting somebody to spend $800 to go hang out with other BlizzCon people. But what I really disagree with is this notion of buying yourself a Marvel for cheap right now, confidently. That it's out there for $2 or $3 bill, you can get yourself a Marvel. Where, you know, IP grows and IP comes out of nowhere. Like Zelda was not an enormous franchise until the Switch. And something like Genshin Impact did not exist in 2019 when Matt Booty was writing that email. You know, you don't know. You have no idea. None of us can. So to me, this idea, even if it was just shot out offhand in an email, this idea that a company in 10 years could potentially own most of the valuable content in gaming it's like a sick corporate fantasy or nightmare, depending if you're one of the other jealous corporations. It's just this idea, like, don't be afraid of that. Don't aspire to that. It can't be. Even if you get it, even if for 1 year you own most of the valuable content in gaming, you won't in 3 years. Things are too fluid. Like Disney right now is looking at a summer in which they just saw Mario make more money than any of their movies. And they're probably thinking, how can we be the Nintendo of cinema? They're probably writing that email, Matt Booty. So count your blessings. That's delayed input for this week. Thanks for watching. I hope now is a good time to update you on how Just Dance went at the Olympic Esports. So last week, I had read that the judges alone would determine the winner of each match. Yet going back and watching this, I did learn that the in-game score actually is a factor. So here's how it works. Each match of Just Dance is 1v1. There are 3 judges, and they sit there like reality competition style. And the thing is, they're not scoring both performances like in other Olympic events you may have seen. They simply award their 1 point to the performer they believe did the best job, with a short explanation, of course. Then, winning the game itself gets you 2 points. This is all to say, if only one of the 3 judges liked you, but you did get the highest score in the game, you could still win your match. However, there were issues. So this is how the second quarterfinal match started.
Without further ado, gentlemen, when you're ready, take it away. Ladies and gentlemen, performing Layla, give it up for your dancers.
All right, so after a few failed attempts, they finally got the song going. But then in the middle, we don't see it on screen, but player 2 is just kicked from the match suddenly. So we cut to this guy. He talks for a bit, but he's muted. There's more stage here. Cut back to this guy. He says they're ready to start. They're not ready to start. And then they start the song again. The next match, we get the full scorecard. Great. And then the match after that, still in the quarterfinals, we're deep into this song and the gray shirts come out to interrupt. Player 2 got dropped again. So now this production team is stalling for 5 minutes while the gray shirts figure out what to do about the switch that keeps disconnecting. And it is a long 5 minutes.
I believe we are almost ready with the song. Just getting... Not yet. Hey, where's Claudio? I want to have a chat with you, my friend. Claudio over there on the caster's booth. How are you feeling the energy here in Singapore so far, buddy? Give it to me.
Man, the energy is unrivaled in here, I have to say. The one thing, we can talk about technology, we can talk about that kind of thing failing, but one thing that hasn't failed is the crowd in here tonight.
But anyway, after the 5 minutes, they redo the song, and as the competitors set their controllers down to hear from the judges, we get an update.
And here's the update. Scores will now only come from the judges, all right?
So for the rest of this tournament, the in-game score does not matter. And we see some confusion in the next lineup here. What do we just set it down? They no longer pick up the Switch controllers. They're playing the game mode where you can't lose. And then in the song after that, they're not even in the multiplayer mode anymore. Nobody, for the rest of this Olympic esports tournament, is holding a controller or playing the game. They are, in fact, just dancing.